Damn!
Today's build is another engine swap that takes the 1990 Mitsubishi GTO and puts in the engine from the Suzuki Escudo. This engine swap is pretty amazing. The swap improves the speed, acceleration, and fuel economy. This swap is probably one of the harder ones to tune given the huge amount of turbo lag on the Escudo, but with the wide body kit, adjustments to power and suspension, it's been tamed to give you some great output, and it puts up some decent performance. I've tuned this car to perform at Le Mans, and as always, I'll provide a full summary including tuning specs for your reference at the end of the video. Just a quick note on the video, the footage I recorded here is from Trial Mountain. The tune is built for Le Mans, but I just wanted to change out the background for these videos. So the swap GTO is pretty incredible. The car is amazing, tuned to 700 performance points. It handles well, it looks good, and you'll crush pretty much everything else on the course. With this swap, the GTO gets a lot more range. You can run this thing at partial mapping and easily get all 3 laps out of it. And even with some fuel mapping, you'll easily get over 200 on the straights. You'll take first within the first lap. This means that this car will perform regardless of the dynamic weather. I believe this car could be tuned to multiple levels as well, but where you're going to struggle is the traction. Swapped engine has a bunch of torque, so I landed it right where I thought it would perform the best, and that is 700 performance points. So the GTO was sold in Japan, while Mitsubishi marketed the car as the 3000 GT in the US. In addition, Chrysler also sold a version known as the Dodge Stealth, which featured a different body style, but was the same mechanically. Chrysler quite liked how the car turned out, and they made it a pace car for the 1991 Indy 500. This was the first time an unofficial Japanese car received the honor. The GTO was based on the Diamante platform, while its engine was a 3-liter dual overhead cam V6, available in either normally aspirated or as a twin turbo. The turbo boosted unit produced 276 horsepower and 377 pounds of torque, while the non-turbo power plant cranked out 221 horsepower and 202 pounds of torque. The GTO had a fair amount of tech included in its production as well. These included an all-wheel drive system, 4-wheel steering, electronic suspension, and an ABS system. It also had active aero that would adjust the front and rear aero according to the vehicle's speed. It also had an active exhaust system that could modify the exhaust note. These numerous features and the good looks gave this car a bit of a cult following with auto enthusiasts. With its high-tech components and Coke bottle shape, the GTO was a fascinating machine right up until the end of its production in August 2001. So in terms of the tune, here's what we've come up with. We increased this performance from 619 performance points to just under 700. Horsepower is now 812, and the new car has 594 pounds of torque. I've slightly detuned this engine to give it a better overall performance and handling. Weight is a bit heavy, around 2,700 pounds, but acceleration, top speed, cornering are all improved from the stock car. It's naturally got a ton of power to put down, so while we are detuning the Escudo slightly, we're offsetting that with much better handling and control. This tune has a few permanent upgrades, and those include weight reduction stage 3, increased body rigidity, and I did use the wide body from GT Auto. Performance upgrades include racing hard tires, along with intermediate and wet tires if you're using this for Le Mans. I also use wider wheels as well. A fully customized suspension, fully customized LSD, front and rear aero from GT Auto. So I use Type A on the front and side, standard rear, and a custom wing. A full control computer, a power restrictor, and a ballast. Just a quick note, I didn't use the ballast, but I kept it on the car so I could just adjust the performance as needed. Fully customized manual transmission. Key note there, it's not a racing transmission. I did use another manual to keep the performance points low. And racing components including carbon brakes, brake pads, a racing clutch and flywheel, a carbon propeller shaft, and a brake balance controller. Brake balance controller I did leave at -2. I felt it worked better with the weight shifted slightly to the front with the current front and rear balance of the car. So for adjustments, a ton of suspension work on this car. So I updated the body height and overall just tightened the suspension. I wasn't a fan of how the original car handled, and with the extra power and the active LCD, I had to tweak the ride height and the rear suspension to give the car a bit more oversteer. The LSD is working hard on this tune to keep that power in check, so be careful on your corner exit on this one. This transmission does have some manual tuning to it, but pause the video if you want to get the exact gear ratios. It's tuned to max out on the Le Mans straight at fuel mapping 3, And like I mentioned, the tune will force you to map it a bit to get the most out of your laps. But you could probably run this thing at fuel mapping 2 for the most part. I just use 3, so I have the extra ability to squeeze out another lap if needed. So feel free to adjust the gear ratios if you want to, and run the track slightly differently. Notable again is that this car has a ton of turbo lag, so I have shortened the gearing to help keep the RPMs higher and keep you higher in the band throughout the majority of the race. This seems to help offset the turbo lag. Just shift this one when it's nearly at the red line to help with your overall acceleration. So let's talk about the race strategy. This car with this updated mileage is great for Le Mans. Plan to run it at fuel mapping 3. As always, adjust for the weather. I'd recommend you keep both wet and intermediate tires on the car, just so you have options for the race and you can adjust accordingly. So watch the weather and stay on the correct tires. Even with the power dial back a bit, you'll have no issues with the lap times with this tune. Like I mentioned, you'll easily take first on the first lap, and you'll be running the straights over 200 pretty much the entire time. A couple other notable parts on this tune that are a bit different from most cars is normally I recommend you guys to short shift. On this one, like shift right at the red line. You want to have your RPMs as high as possible for the entire race. The other notable thing is that the car definitely has a tendency to kick out under full acceleration, so just make sure you stabilize before you fully accelerate. And the final point is that the braking is okay, not fantastic. I tend to brake a bit early on this build and just kind of coast in, and then just get the RPMs where I want it before I accelerate out. So you can pick this car up from the used dealership. It's a relatively cheap car, but the swap itself is fairly expensive. The Escudo swap is over $1 million. The car itself is a good swap. It's easily one of the better performance swaps once you get used to the turbo lag. This thing just overall has better acceleration and top speed than most engine swaps in the game. I've linked a video on engine swaps should you need more information. It covers the swaps and it has the updated list pinned in the comments if you want to learn more. Just as a quick comment, to summarize this one, the GTO is already a solid car. This swap just makes it a killer. For those of you that made it this far into the video and wanted to say thank you, I do appreciate it. These guides take a fair amount of time to make, and you'd think by now I'd be super fast at knocking them out, but with the multiple replays, deliveries, tuning setups and testing and scripts, it does take a bit more time than I'd planned. So hopefully you enjoyed this tune and it earns you considerable money in GT7. If you like these tunes, please like and comment below. It helps with the channel growth on YouTube, and it helps tell me what content that you guys like. If you're looking to connect with others around gaming in general, feel free to join our Discord. There you can find more information on GT7, tunes, and just overall a good community. As always, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.